This week, the law finally caught up with Donald J. Trump. He became the first ever former president to be charged with a crime, having spent decades dodging legal accountability for a whole host of other alleged crimes. On Tuesday in New York City, Trump pleaded not guilty to 34 felony counts of falsifying business records in connection to hush money payments made to porn star Stormy Daniels, payments allegedly reimbursed by Trump to Michael Cohen while he was in the White House. Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg spoke after the arraignment, explaining why his office chose to charge Trump with felonies rather than misdemeanors.
Under New York state law, it is a felony to falsify business records with intent to defraud and an intent to conceal another crime. That is exactly what this case is about. 34 false statements made to cover up other crimes. These are felony crimes in New York State, no matter who you are. We cannot and will not normalize serious criminal conduct. The defendant repeatedly made false statements on New York business records.
But don't get your hopes up for any fast-moving action on this case. For one, nothing is going to happen for a very long time. Trump isn't due in court again till the end of the year. And for another, as liberal Ian Millhiser writes in Vox, there's a very real risk that this indictment will end in an even bigger anticlimax. It's unclear that the felony statute that Trump is accused of violating actually applies to him. And conservative David French echoes that sentiment in the New York Times, writing that Bragg's legal theory is, quote, largely untested. Other legal analysts disagree. So at this point in the show, you would probably expect me now to go into the details about the legal implications for Trump, the arguments on both sides, and bring out a panel of lawyers to explain the case and why Trump actually should be found guilty, etc., etc. But I'm not going to do that today. Because while none of us know whether Trump will be found guilty in this case, and remember, he's innocent until proven guilty, what we do know for sure, based on what we've learned from this case in recent weeks, is that the 2024 Republican frontrunner is unqualified to hold public office, is unfit to be president of the United States. We've seen enough. So today, here are 5 things the Manhattan case alone has shown us in political and moral terms, if not legal terms, that in any normal world would already disqualify Trump from the 2024 race. Number one, this case has proved for the umpteenth time that Donald Trump is the shameless master of the racist attack. He posted on Truth Social that Alvin Bragg, a black man, is a Soros-backed animal. That's a 2-for-1, an anti-Semitic dog whistle combined with an anti-black racist slur. Just imagine if Mitt Romney had used the same term during his presidential race a little over 10 short years ago. That certainly would have been disqualifying for him in that GOP, but not this one. Number 2, Trump cannot stop using language that incites violence and threats. He warned of, quote, death and destruction if he was charged by the Manhattan DA. He also posted a disturbing image of himself holding a baseball bat near DA Bragg's head. In fact, both Bragg and the judge have been subjected to threats. The judge even requested all parties in the case to refrain from statements that may incite violence or unrest. Yeah, good luck with that. Which brings us to point number 3. The man who was president and wants to be president again doesn't give a damn about the Constitution, the rule of law, or an independent judiciary in this country. He has no respect for the judicial process. In fact, just hours after his arraignment and that request to cool his tone, Trump attacked not just the judge, but the judge's family.
This is where we are right now. I have a Trump-hating judge with a Trump-hating wife and family whose daughter worked for Kamala Harris and now receives money from the Biden-Harris campaign and a lot of men.
By the way, Trump lawyers who have been claiming this past week that if his name was Donald Smith, not Donald Trump, he wouldn't be indicted. Worth pointing out, if he wasn't named Donald Trump, he wouldn't be able to get away with that rhetoric you just heard. Oh, and this isn't the first time Trump has gone after a judge. In 2016, he attacked Judge Gonzalo Curiel, the man overseeing the fraud case against Trump University. At the time, candidate Trump called Curiel a hater and went after his Mexican ancestry, another example of the former president's racism. Number 4, Trump lies and lies and lies. We knew that before this case, but it's certainly been underscored now. Why do I say that? Because back in 2018, Trump claimed to know nothing about hush money payments to Stormy Daniels.
Did you know about the $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels? Then why did Michael Cohen make it if there was no truth or allegation?
Well, you have to ask Michael Cohen. Michael's my attorney, and you'll have to ask Michael.
Do you know where he got the money to make that payment?
No, I don't know.
But less than a month later, Team Trump admitted to authorizing the payment, a direct contradiction, a.k.a. he was caught in a lie. And the fifth and final reason why Trump is unfit for office, by the Republican Party's own standards, not my standards, not your standards, their standards, is because of his complete and utter moral bankruptcy. Because sure, Trump allies have been quick to point out that paying off a porn star is not in and of itself a crime, going all the way back to when the hush money story first broke in 2018.
Did Mr. Trump direct Michael Cohen to pay off these two women or not?
No, the truth is actually what Cohen testified to under oath before Congress, which is that the president didn't know about this. And Chris, even if it were true, it's not a crime.
OK, sure. Paying off someone to keep silent about an alleged affair isn't necessarily a crime. And Trump, a man noted for his honesty, does deny the affair. And yet sleaze is sleaze in politics. We're talking about a potential Republican presidential nominee allegedly cheating on his wife who had just given birth with an adult film star. Shouldn't the specter of that rumored affair shock and embarrass the Christian right, the Republican Party of porn bans and family values? The party that, metaphorically speaking, stoned Bill Clinton for alleged affairs 3 decades earlier. In fact, impeached him and tried to indict him. So yes, we will all be obsessed with the outcome of Trump's Manhattan case for the foreseeable future. Legal analysts will try and predict every possible outcome, understandably. But right now, in this moment, let's not let the legal aspect of this story overlook the equally important political and moral aspects of it. Everything that we know about this case and everything Trump has done in response to this case is a reminder of who he really is and why the American people can't seriously entrust him with the presidency again. I mean, as far as Trump's fitness for high office is concerned, in my non-legal view, it's case closed. Joining me now to discuss is Tara Setmeyer. She's a senior advisor at the Anti-Trump Lincoln Project and a former GOP communications director. And David K. Johnston, he's the founder of DCReport.org and the author of The Big Cheat, How Donald Trump Fleeced America and Enriched Himself and His Family. Thank you both for joining me. David, you've been following Trump for decades now. Did you ever imagine we would get to this point where he's actually finally charged with a crime?
Yeah, once he became president, I figured that eventually the authorities would have to respond to his conduct. I frankly didn't think it would take this long, and it's going to be a long time till we get to trial because the New York DA's office didn't object to having the next meeting in December, which screams that they are going to issue a superseding indictment.
I mean, I did a monologue the other day on MSNBC about for 50 years, Donald Trump has been evading the law. Back in 1973, he turns up on the front of the New York Times accused of violating the Fair Housing Act. So it was interesting that we finally got to this point this week. Tara, we just played a clip of Rudy Giuliani saying even if Trump really did direct Michael Cohen to make these hush money payments, which he denies, it's not a crime, they say, so it doesn't matter. Is that really where the Republican Party, your former party, has fallen to, that you can lie, cheat, steal, philander, whatever, as long as it's not technically a crime?
Yes. And you forgot a couple of things. You can try to overturn an election. You can instigate an insurrection. You can, have a fake elector scheme. You can try and extort the Ukrainian president. You can consort with Russians and do God knows what else in business with them. You can attack the intelligence community. You can attack veterans. You can go ahead and attack veterans' families. You can praise Russia and their dictatorships over there, and North Korea. I mean, the list is long, Mehdi. The Republican Party that I knew, that my grandfather's grandfather was a part of, does not exist anymore. It is dead and gone, dead and gone. The party of law and order, which was something that was attractive to me as the granddaughter of a police officer, and the idea of the rule of law and following rules, that was something that attracted me to the Republican Party. That's dead and gone. Republicans are now the party of chaos and criminality. They're the party of illegality and disorder. Like, they have no moral high ground to stand on whatsoever to clutch their pearls over a political indictment of Donald Trump, as if this is a speeding ticket or reckless driving, and they arrested him and sent him to jail. It is asinine to think that Republicans would rally around Donald Trump, even now, still after all the things that he has done, after they claim that they want to off-ramp from him, but no, they actually don't. That's why he's still leading Ron DeSantis by 30 points and, increasing in his support with the Republican base.
We'll come back to Ron DeSantis in a moment. I do want to ask you about that, Tara. But, David, Republicans are saying that Trump would never have been charged if he was just a regular Joe. But really, the opposite is true, is it not? Trump has been coddled and enabled. He's been protected in a way that a regular Joe would never have been able to get away with for half a century. You and I, if we were charged with a crime, could not then go on live TV and attack the judge and the judge's family and get away with that.
You know, not even mafia figures do what Donald is doing, attacking the judge and the prosecutor. And let's remember that those who say, as Trump's lawyers did the other day, that no one would be charged with this crime, Michael Cohen went to prison for this crime. So this is nonsense. Donald Trump's company is a felon, has 17 felony convictions. So does one of his subsidiaries. And yeah, Donald has been committing crimes his entire life. I've written about him for the last 35 years. This is a man who gave liquor, limousines, and hotel rooms to 12, 13, and 14-year-old children who had money to gamble in his casinos. There is no moral standard of any kind in Donald Trump. And to watch Republicans get up and say they're Christians and endorse a man who in writing and in numerous talks has called Christians fools, idiots, and schmucks, and said his life philosophy is revenge, which is totally rejected by the New Testament, is astonishing. And it tells you that these people don't have any moral principles. That's why Donald's so attractive to them.
Oh, he claims to love Christianity and the Bible, of course, David. Let's be fair. Tara, a Yahoo YouGov poll. Yes, of course. Tara, what about the Bible from Lafayette Square? Tara, the poll that came out from YouGov and Yahoo suggests that after Trump was indicted, his support surged. He's actually grown his lead over Florida Governor Ron DeSantis to 26 points in a hypothetical head-to-head Republican matchup. And sure, this controversy is rallying GOP voters to Trump, according to this poll. But is that going to help him with independent voters in a general election when his supporters say, this is going to put him in the White House? Which person who voted for Trump in 2016 then went to Biden in 2020 is going to say, actually, I'm going to go back to Trump in 2024. I'm so impressed with the way he's handled this indictment.
Yeah, that's the rub here, right? It's like, okay, the Republican base, which dictates the primary, and that all of these Republican leaders and elected officials are so afraid of, that's all that they control is the primary. But when you get into general elections, it's those moderate Republicans, those independent voters that are leaving the Republican Party in droves. That's why you saw the gains for Democrats in 2018. That's why Biden won in 2020. And that's why there was no Republican wave. It was more like a tinkle in 2022, because independents and moderate Republicans, we call it the Bannon line at the Lincoln Project, that used to be about 3 to 7%. That's widening now. That's double digits. That's like 8 to 11, maybe more percent now. That is leaving the party because they do not want to deal with the crazy. So this deal with the devil that Kevin McCarthy and Elise Stefanik and Lindsey Graham and all these people shilling for Trump, you realize that they're doing this, but Mitch McConnell isn't. The guys over in the Senate really are not the leadership there, because they understand that they cannot do this and think they're going to win statewide Senate races. So this is really counterintuitive for the Republicans, because all it's doing is shrinking the base. Yeah, okay, Donald Trump is going to be the nominee, as we've predicted for a year now at the Lincoln Project. He is going to be the nominee. This is emboldening him and his base. They're consolidating around him. But when it comes to a general election, this is not a good look for them. And Republican consultants know this, but they're still afraid to stand up and say anything.
They know this, but Republican candidates won't say it because they lack spines. Tara Setmeyer, David K. Johnston, thank you both. Appreciate you.